Hey everybody, Zach here with Infernal Tool Technologies, and today we are going to be talking about embodied carbon. Hey, if it's the first time here, then please leave a comment down below and let me know what you think about the channel and this video in particular. And if I'm giving you any value, then please hit the like button and potentially think about subscribing down below. I'm going to be putting a lot more videos out in the future pertaining about the construction industry and how we are going to be projecting out into the future and how we all can really protect ourselves and thrive in the changing world that is coming. So, embodied carbon. Basically, what embodied carbon is the life cycle of an entire structure. So, when you go to develop a building or get a loan for a building, you are going to have some sort of form that lays out the embodiment of carbon that you're going to be basically putting the footprint of carbon out into the world. So that comes from the materials being processed, being distributed, the actual structure being constructed, and after construction, the operational expenses and uses from the life cycle of the entire structure that you're building. So that's what embodied carbon is. So let's delve a little bit deeper into each aspect of embodied carbon. So starting out with the materials and how you're processing them. So what is going to be happening into the future is you are going to have to look at what materials that you're using, and you're going to have to see how much carbon does it take to actually harvest or produce this material, and throughout its life cycle, will it actually produce more carbon or will it extract carbon from the air? And things like wood, for example, you think in an ever-changing world that they're going to start getting rid of wood, and all the stuff we hear about deforestation is a big concern. But actually, wood is a very great product to use because it actually stores carbon. So once you will expend carbon when you're cutting down the trees and milling the trees and distributing the lumber to the job site. But once the lumber is on that job site, then it actually will store carbon. So if you are efficiently harvesting and distributing this wood, then throughout its life cycle it actually could be carbon neutral or potentially even carbon negative depending on the way that you use it. But one big concern that comes with wood that everybody probably knows is the fact that there's a massive amount of waste when you are using lumber. The trees, when you're cutting them down, a lot of that is waste. There's a lot of sawdust, and on the job site there's a lot of waste. There's cut-offs, and a lot of stuff gets wasted. But coming out in the future, some companies out here today have actually figured out a way to take sawdust and combine it with another material and actually use this sawdust in 3D printing. So they can actually 3D print basically anything. Not structural, I'm assuming. Maybe we can get to the point where they're actually printing structural things, but I think it's just more so like you can 3D print items or tools or things like that that you can bring back to market and potentially use. So, and then there's other alternatives as well, using the wood for wood chips for different purposes. And I'm sure you can take the waste and repurpose it as long as we are being efficient about it. We're not just burning it in a big pit at a dump site or something, or we're not just letting it rot away. We can actually repurpose all these things. So lumber is actually a really great material that we are going to be using in the future, and we have used in the past, so I'm looking forward to that. But there's also a lot of other materials out there that are very carbon neutral and even carbon negative that are going to be coming more apparent to people. I mean, steel is one that's huge. It came um, to the forefront of this industry once we started constructing skyscrapers. And ever since then, we've actually made a lot of advancements in steel where we have light gauge steel, um, to where we can actually just construct walls and things like that. Even in your home, in your basement or something, if you're prone to flooding, you can actually construct out of steel, and it has pretty good purposes in certain areas. So we've made a lot of advancements in that as well, but there's also a lot of expenditure that comes with metal. And there's the mining of the metal, which is diesel machinery and deforestation and cutting into the earth. And then there's the actual processing of those metals and the distribution and the installation, which so that has its own problems as well. But I'm sure on certain level of projects, it weighs out. Where if you're using a massive amount of steel, then it could actually you can be carbon neutral or carbon negative. So that's great. That's very great for people who can do massive projects like that. But if you're doing projects on a smaller scale, it might not actually be effective, and it might not work out in what they were going to be laying out in the future with these sustainability goals for 2030 and for 2050. And if you've watched any of my videos in the past, then I'm sure you know by now that I'm a huge I'm raising the red flag of awareness for people to really understand that this is coming quick. 2030 is right around the corner. 2050 is a little bit away, but a lot of things are going to be coming, especially between the years of 2030 to 2050, that are going to affect the construction industry astronomically. I already believe that these changes are coming today, and they are going to keep coming, and they're going to get more strict, and we just need to be aware of that. So think about the materials that you're using in your projects. How are they actually sourced? How do you source them? What companies are you working with? Are they sustainable companies, or do they have a lot of waste? These are things that you need to think about, because it's going to be a lot of regulation in the future. And if you go to a particular mill, for example, and get a lot of your lumber, law and regulation could come down, and this mill could actually go out of business because of the practices that they use, and they're not willing to adapt. So I'm always speaking to developers and general contractors, but I actually want to raise a red flag of awareness for the actual manufacturers and producers as well, is that you need to start thinking about some of the practices, the ways that you're actually extracting the materials and processing these materials. You're going to have to make a lot of changes in your business in the coming years. So why not get ahead of it? Start listening to this channel and gain a little knowledge on what's going to be coming down the pipeline, and make some small changes in your business. So, on to the next phase of the embodied carbon cycle is the actual distribution of that material to the job site. So there isn't huge advancements that we've made in this yet. There's small things that people can do. One thing is just being very efficient in your ordering and who you're ordering your supplies from. The amount of trips that need to be taken for delivery to the job site, if you can minimize that as much as possible, then that's going to benefit you in the end. And it's going to be less carbon that you're putting in the air, because every diesel vehicle that's hauling these materials to your job site, every person that's loading these trucks, all this adds to this. Excuse me. Adds to this. And we need to be really aware of this, because it's an easy change that you can make. You can just be sure that you're ordering the right amounts of materials. That's pretty basic. But then schedule your deliveries properly to the job site, so that people aren't going back and forth and having to move stuff around. That can be pretty difficult, especially on a large scale job site, but it's just the small things that we can do to try to get better at and become more efficient at, so that we're just prepared for when the day comes when they start putting these laws and regulations into effect. So that's just something simple that we can all do. But something else that could potentially be coming down the pipeline is the actual vehicles that you're distributing these materials to your job site with. Um, can we take a step away from diesel by maybe having a hybrid vehicle of some sort in the future? That could be a potential, or something with the distribution. The vehicle is actually generating something on the trip. Maybe they can. I don't really know. I don't have an answer for this right now. So we're going to see in the coming years what innovation and what technology comes out for this portion of the whole project. Maybe we'll have better and more efficient ways to distribute materials, and we all just need to start keeping our eyes open and being aware of what's out there, and maybe changing the ways that we do things. If you have a fleet of delivery vehicles, then maybe think about switching them out or preparing yourself to switch them out when the time comes. So just some stuff that we'll be aware of coming in the future, and I will do my due diligence to try to share with you guys what's out there in the market. So on to the next phase of this is your actual construction of the project. So as you're constructing this project, obviously there's some heavy machinery, which is diesel. So you're going to have them running all day, every day. That's going to add to your carbon footprint of your project. And the cutting and placement and constructing of the building is going to have its own form of carbon footprint as well. Just the work being done on the job site is gonna add to that. But then you need to think of all the workers and their commuting and their movement throughout the cities or townships or wherever you're at. That's going to be involved in it as well. So if you have a project that's going to have 500 people on it, you need to think about the 500 people that are commuting every single day. So that's going to add to that as well. And all these things that I'm saying right now might seem pretty daunting. It's like I have enough on my plate right now. Really, this is something that I need to worry about. And you might just want to fluff that off, but I'm letting you know it's something that you definitely need to be aware of. Because they're gonna make it at some point. They're gonna make it where for you to get a loan, you're gonna have a written statement about all this. You're gonna have to have the knowledge, or you're gonna have to hire somebody who has the knowledge on this that can write this statement for you of how you're actually gonna make the project roll out. But even though you most likely are gonna be able to outsource the statement from somebody, you still have to have some knowledge on this, because if you're the person actually running this project, you have to know how this whole process is going to work to actually live up to what is in that statement. This emission financial statement, or I don't even know what it'd be called yet, but basically, yeah, it's a carbon statement for what your carbon proposal maybe. Let's go with that. Your carbon proposal for the project is what it's going to cost. And so what I talked about a little bit in the past video, so once you're completed with this entire project, you need to either offset what you've done in some way by the materials that you've chosen can help you in that way. So if you're choosing wood, for example, it can actually extract some of the carbon back out of the air. But there's also alternatives as well, and I want to delve in further videos about what we can do to actually pull carbon out of the air or reduce the need to produce more carbon over time. So one huge thing is solar panels, for example. People are going to probably be putting that on every single project. It's just going to become a subcontractor that is known. You need to bid out a portion for solar panels. They're going to put them on the top of skyscrapers, maybe on the sides of them, you name it. It's probably all over the place. And that's going to be a huge thing that people can do. And that's going to be the most obvious thing that people can do. But I want us as a community to start thinking of alternative ways that we can actually produce an amazing project for a customer and also creatively come up with a way of extracting carbon and meeting these carbon neutrality goals. And one thing that potentially could be really great is incorporating plants in some way. I'm sure many of you have seen buildings where they have living walls. They'll have all the way up in skyscrapers an actual living wall, and basically it looks aesthetically pleasing. People walk by and they see that and they really like that, so that's great. But it also is actually extracting carbon out of the air. So if that can be part of um, your carbon statement, then that that could potentially get you approval to do the project if you have something that's outlined that you this is what you're going to do. Or you can have a rooftop forest or something. I've been seeing those pop up pretty regularly now. You can see them. There's just forests on top of skyscrapers, which is pretty great. But I don't know if that's enough to really offset what you're going to be putting out there. So maybe we can come up with some more creative things where actually away from the building, you're actually doing something else. So you can have the project proposal at XYZ location, but at a different location, you could be planting trees or starting an orchard or having a farm or something. So you're actually producing something that's great for a customer, but you're also producing something else that's going to be great for the environment, and it could potentially be great for the economy as well. So if we can come up with these really great ideas that are going to intertwine um, big construction and development with sustainable practices, then we just we need to come up with a way to do this, because they're going to come knocking on our door saying that we need to make changes. And like I said, one of the most simple ones are going to be like putting solar panels or something on your building. But I just think there's so much better ways that we can go about this that are going to actually thrive communities. So if we're building, I mean, this doesn't have to be just about big city centers. It could be a small town that's building a factory or something. Let's just say Amazon. Let's use Amazon for example. Amazon is building a factory. So the project proposal is putting out this X amount of carbon. We can actually go over here and take another plot of land, and we can build a forest, or we can have an orchard, and we can put people to work, and we can see the offset between that as well. That would probably be years down the road, but that's things that we're going to have to look at together too. The changes that you make, do they have to be instant, or do you have a set amount of years that it takes for you to get to that carbon neutrality? I know they want every building, every single structure to be carbon neutral by 2050. So I have a feeling we're going to have a deadline, and that's going to be the deadline. So I don't know what happens after that point, after 2050, the new construction, what you're going to have to do. But who knows, we might have a lot more technology at that point to where we could do something totally different. But in an article that I was actually reading just before this video, was they were saying by 2060 we are going to actually have 2 times the amount of supply of buildings, basically. So all the buildings in the entire world right now, in what is that, less than 40 years, we're going to have double that. So try to wrap your head around that. The cities that we don't even know of yet, that aren't that big, might start exploding. I mean, take like Boise, Idaho, for example. Right now it's a hot topic, but who knows, maybe 40 years from now it could be a major metropolitan city. I mean, on a huge scale. You never know. If the economy does well enough, which it's a little shaky right now, but who knows what's going to play out. But if we keep going in this direction where development is great, the money's cheap, I think a lot of people don't realize how long this can actually go on. With America being the world reserve currency, it can go on a very long time. So we could be looking at a lot of development over the next few years that could potentially be, like I said, turning smaller cities into major metropolitan cities. So we'll have to keep our eyes on that as well, because I'm sure there's a lot of money to be made going to these particular places. Like if you can see where people migrate, there's an opportunity. If you're a developer and you notice that a bunch of people are moving to a specific place, then you can make a lot of money off of developing these places. But all I'm trying to drill in your mind right now is that you need to start making these small changes to where you're developing sustainably, because they're gonna come at us in the next few years. I guarantee you they're gonna come at us with some sort of law or regulation that's gonna make it so you have to have some sort of sustainability. So don't you want to be at the forefront of that? Don't you want to, when that day comes, the law and regulation gets passed through Congress, don't you want to be like, I'm already prepared for this. I already knew it was coming because I've been listening to this channel and I changed my business around it. It's something that we all really need to think about, because they have their agendas with the Paris Agreement, and the globe has agreed, the majority of the globe has agreed, by 2030 they want to have 50% reduction in the carbon emissions, and by 2050 they want to be carbon neutral. And that should scare a lot of you, because that's not something small that they're saying. That's a dramatic change in everybody's lifestyle. Not just developers, not people in the construction field, but everybody. That goes down to agriculture. That goes down to the electricity sector, all the utilities, for example, that entire sector, down to the residential, just the homeowner, the way that you live inside of your home is going to be affected by this. The things you use in your home is going to be affected by this. So we all need to be aware and prepared for what's going to be coming, because it is coming. I hope with the research that I do and what I continue to learn and share with you guys, I can start to change some of your minds, and hopefully some of you can realize that this is a lot bigger than you think it is. They had a plan for this years and years and years ago, and now we're getting to the end of this phase where we have to meet these goals. And if we don't meet these goals, there's probably going to be some major repercussions. And let's just be on top of this. Let's be at the forefront. And mainly, I don't want to say this, I don't want to come across this and make it seem like you have to go on a certain path, or you have to do certain things or follow certain standards. I just want to open this conversation up and start a community around this where we can start coming up with some plans and some great ideas to where we can become more sustainable, and we can adhere to some of the laws that they're going to be putting out there, but also be bettering the world, not just enslaving us and making us actually have to follow these standards and be unhappy about it. No, let's get behind it and let's put our own laws and regulations in place where we are actually changing the world for the better, and we're making great places to live. We're making communities thrive again, and I think a huge way that can happen is by us just sitting here and having conversations with each other and bouncing ideas off of each other. If it's having food forests throughout cities, if it's having living walls on buildings, if it's some other technology I don't know about, then please leave a comment down below. Let me know. I would love to hear from you guys. I would love to know the info that you have on this. Maybe you're actually involved in this in some way, then please put something down below and let me know. Please hit the like button. It just really helps me out and gets reached to other people out there. And think about hitting the subscribe button, because if this is something that you're interested in, or it's the field that you're in, then you're going to be wanting to hear what's coming in the future, and we can get together on the nitty gritty of what's actually going on, and we can start learning a little bit more about the intentions and what's going to be coming down the pipeline. So, thanks for tuning in, guys. I'll catch you on the next one. See ya.